section manager is going to be doing most of the talking, and he will stop after each section, like deer, elk, and moose, to clarify it and answer any questions. I hope that was clear. And if there's nothing else, I think we will just roll into it. There's roughly 40 people, maybe even more, on the call. So please be cognizant of that. If you're asking a question or uh, want to speak, that there are others that are probably in that same place. And we have a couple hours. The presentation shouldn't take that long, so we'll have plenty of time to have questions. Okay, Kyle, I think you can roll with it.
Okay, thank you, Anise. I will set up my screen to share. Please let me know when you can see it in the full screen mode.
Yeah, we got it. It looks good.
Okay, yeah, so thank you everyone for coming this evening. Again, my name is Kyle Garrison. I'm the ungulate section manager in our game division of the wildlife program, and here to talk about our ungulate topics under consideration and where we're requesting public input for this 3-year season setting. So as Anise mentioned, I'll pause after a bucket of topics. We'll have deer, elk, moose, and then methods. And so I'll pause after that, and we'll have a question session after each topic session. First up is our deer topics under consideration. And the first topic under consideration is establishing a species-specific deer license and tag system. The background of this topic is that many hunters report that current deer harvest pressure and crowding, especially in eastern Washington, have diminished the quality of their hunting experience and have requested us to evaluate options for reducing that crowding, reducing that harvest pressure. One option that's been mentioned routinely is to create a species-specific deer license, similar to the east-west tag system that we currently have in place for elk. This species-specific deer license and tag system would require hunters to choose their deer species that they want to hunt. They would choose their species based on the preference of their pursuit, which would potentially reduce crowding, but importantly, to an unknown degree. Overall harvest and participation would likely remain similar under this system. And it's really, again, I want to underscore unknown how much reduction in crowding this would result in. What it would likely affect primarily are Western Washington deer hunters that go east to Eastern Washington and pursue either whitetail or mule deer. Eastern Washington mule deer and whitetail deer hunters don't really come over to Western Washington to pursue blacktail to a great degree. So the purpose here is truly in understanding the public sentiment on a species-specific deer license and tag under the umbrella of an effort for us to try to improve the hunting experience in Washington State for ungulates. Okay, the next topic for consideration is to open a late season archery deer hunting in GMUs 136, 269, 568, and 673 as requested by the hunting public in these areas. Upon evaluation of the available data, our biologists have determined that deer populations in these units are stable, and additional late season archery harvest is not expected to significantly increase overall take, and it creates consistency with adjoining and adjacent units where they already have this opportunity. As such, the department proposes opening the late season archery in GMUs 136 and 269 for 3-point or better antlered deer, and in GMUs 568 and 673 for any antlered black-tailed buck. The purpose of this proposal is to maximize hunting opportunity consistent with our agency's mission. Okay, next topic. Buck to doe population ratios in GMU 209, 215, and 233 are declining to levels below management objectives, and our area biologists recommend closing late archery seasons in these units to reduce overall buck harvest and try to promote this population rebuilding within management criteria. These units will retain an early archery season consistent with modern firearm and muzzleloader seasons, And we will offer a limited number of late season archery special permits in either the buck or quality category to replace that lost late season. Our purpose here is to manage hunting to ensure sustainable harvest and provide recreational opportunities for diverse user groups. Next topic is to extend the deer muzzleloader season for late season from December 15 to December 31st in GMU 564. Blacktail deer in this unit can support more hunting opportunity, and because this area is mostly private and modern firearm weapons are not permitted, they're restricted in this unit. Extending muzzleloader seasons expands opportunity for that user group and matches with the archery season length. The purpose here is to maximize hunting opportunity consistent with our mission. And our next topic is that some hunters have expressed interest in managing for an older and larger antlered black-tailed deer buck in some select units. Upon consideration, first as background, a 3-point or better APR would protect younger bucks, allowing them to mature and focus take on older bucks. Our area biologists recommend piloting a 3-point or greater APR during the last half of the October modern firearm season and for the entire 4-day late season in GMU 672. This pilot period would include the 2027 to 2020 license years, so this upcoming 3-year package would be evaluated during that time period and reassessed going into the next 3-year package. Our purpose here is to manage regulations to achieve higher average antler point characteristics of the harvested black-tailed bucks in GMU 672, commensurate with public interest in this proposal and this idea, and to pilot this over the next 3 years. And that's the end of the deer topic, so I'll pause there and take any questions.
So if you have questions, like I said, you can either write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we will call on you. Heather, do you see? Oh, there we go.
All right, I see someone's hand. Blake, you can unmute. I will unmute you and see if. I think you'll
Hello,
have.
can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Blake.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time today. My question is regarding the unit where you're proposing, or series of units where you're proposing reducing harvest of antlered deer due to low population numbers. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact language that was used. But my question is whether there are currently antlerless tags that are issued for that unit or those series of units. And if so, why not start with reducing that opportunity before you move to antlered opportunity to improve population numbers? Thanks.
Thanks, Blake. Great question. I don't believe that there is antlerless harvest opportunity permitted in those units. Our mule deer populations are managed pretty conservatively for antlerless take to promote population stability and growth where possible. And we were focusing this specifically for that reason, and also on the bucks. We're really dipping down. This watershed, these units specifically, have declined quite a bit over the last 4 years in the number of bucks seen in our aerial surveys, to a point where they are below our management threshold of 15 to 100, or 15 bucks to 100 does. So we really do need to manage on that buck component for that specific reason.
So the next speaker is Chris Fisher. If you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you, and good evening. And I appreciate the time to interact and have an opportunity to respond to these proposed changes. The question I have is, when you just kind of add on to the previous question, is reducing the bucks in this area or buck harvest. Can you kind of give us an idea of how many bucks are being harvested during this late season?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's a good question. Unfortunately, our reporting data doesn't allow us to separate early and late season harvest. So it's pretty challenging for us to differentiate when that animal was harvested based. We have the reports, but the actual estimate of how many animals being harvested is really hard to derive on the early or late. I'll note though that we're choosing to only limit late season here so that we can retain a maximum opportunity in that early season. So we're trying to only take some of the opportunity to try to meet our management objectives without really cutting into the core of archery opportunity.
Well, as an archer, I appreciate that. But from a standpoint of from the biology of it, though, it seems like I know this is counterintuitive to what my own personal selfish interest, but um, if you kind of leaned more towards allowing the late season and maybe reduce the early season, wouldn't there be a greater opportunity for those bucks that didn't get harvested in the early season to breed does and potentially, get the back to a better buck to doe ratio? I I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that it may you may be onto something in terms of like a different animal may be responsible for the reproduction, a different male, but the intent isn't to increase uh like productivity in terms of like a pregnancy rate or what the population produces. That sort of happens regardless of what buck is really being harvested and when. The pregnancy rates of does are on deer are usually very high and pretty consistently high.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question, Chris.
I don't see any more hands, but I do see a lot of questions in the chat. I don't know if any, so you want to start addressing those or?
Yep, I will. I'll start at the top. I would like to see more opportunity for traditional muzzle-loading firearms. So that's a comment, not a question. So please put that in your comment when you fill out the survey. What would happen with youth tags if we went to draw system for the east side, or specific, would we want to further take opportunity from youth? So there is no proposal currently for a draw system on the east side, so I'm not sure what this question is asking. The next one is, what would happen with your tags if we went to, well, again, that's the same one, sorry. Please consider special elk hunt flintlock. Again, that's not a question, and here we're trying to get questions on the proposals. What's up with the draw only mule deer? Again, that is not a proposal. I'm not sure where that is coming from. Again, nothing in the chat is a question.
All right, we do have Blake with his hand up once again. So Blake, feel free to unmute.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I have probably several questions about the species-specific deer license or tag. I'm curious, you know, if this is considered, what kind of timeline are we talking about for when we would see a proposal go to the commission? Um, and I'm curious if the idea would be to keep all else the same, all season dates and whatnot. I'm curious about whether this would be a trial period, whether there could be some sort of a trial period attached to this to see if it generates the results that are intended. Yeah, and I would just like to hear a lot more about the proposal in general. So whatever you can offer, I think people would be really
Yeah,
interested in hearing about
it
that.
isn't currently a proposal, Blake, and so that's why there aren't very many specifics. This is us putting something out there to see how people react to it. And if we do consider it, there will be a formal proposal that will be put into the rulemaking process, which would happen February, March timeframe. And then that would be for the next 3 year seasons. So 27 through 29.
Okay, are there any other details that could be shared about, I mean, what sort of considerations are being given around this? Or is this just really sort of back of the
There,
napkin, just throwing it out there
well,
to
it's
get a
basically
reaction?
you would have to choose what species you want to hunt. So it's either you choose a blacktail, or you choose a mule deer, or you choose a whitetail. And so that would be the the end of it, pretty much. I mean, that's the proposal, and that would make people uh, I guess, choose what species, and then when we get those data, when we understand that, then we can kind of figure out if there is any need for further regulation. So until we try it, there really isn't a way for us to know what the outcome is. We know
Is it
roughly about
possible?
a third,
Sorry.
and a third hunt these species. So roughly, it's already pretty split that way, but we don't know how many. Well, on the harvest side of things, but we don't know how many hunt multiple places before they harvest for different species. Kyle, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll just add on a little bit that I think it's important to recognize that this is a putting it out there to really truly get public sentiment, and that, like Anise said, that's why there's not a lot of detail here because we're really scoping the idea. It's been brought forward to us both, and proposed both internally by wildlife managers and brought to us also by the public, and it's been something that's been brought up pretty consistently over the last 5 to 6 years, at least in my experience here in game division. So, I think to answer your question a little bit of like, would it change the seasons? Would those stay the same? I think largely those would stay the same. I don't think if we were to implement this, you would expect to see major changes in season dates and timing, season opportunities. As Anise mentioned, though, it would take a period of time to understand how do hunters self-select? What are people choosing? If there's more people choosing mule deer, does that settle out over a year or two? Do people, it would be a little bit of an experience for the hunter to figure out what is the best bet for them to go and put forward and choose in the following year. And there would be some changes that would be required on the special hunt application system as well. It would need to be reflective in similar way of our east-west elk tag system. And so if you, for example, apply for an Eastern Washington elk special hunt, you do get locked into that Eastern Washington elk tag. And so I think you would anticipate probably something like that in terms of one of the more major changes, besides the fact that now you would only be able to pursue one species. But I do want to underline that piece of we really just want to understand what is the broader public sentiment. We get people come forward with ideas all the time, and it can be hard to gauge what is that public input, what's that public feeling. So this is that first step in trying to understand that.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the chat first, and then we'll go to Chris next. So, how do we get an early August archery blacktail season? And similar to the high buck in the Olympic units. So this, if I'm understanding the question, this isn't a high buck hunt, but it would be an early season blacktail hunt. That's archery specific. So it's not something we're considering right now, but Kyle, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'd like to see that kind of idea put forward, and as we go forward in our public input process and trying to, we did solicit ideas quite a while ago for this existing 3-year season setting, so I don't think that that's something we can rush into here. But we would get that from a member of the public and do the same thing that we've done over the last 6 to 7 months, where then we bring those ideas, we consolidate them across the different species. We go to the different area biologists. We talk about the pros and the cons. Can we have more harvest? Do we need to cut back on harvest? All the nuanced conversations per topic or per proposal. So that would be something I'd encourage you to put forward in the next cycle. And you can do that either by contacting your local area biologist or contacting us in headquarters at the wildlife program.
Okay, the next one is will there be more opportunity for archery antlerless deer or just draw in general for archery deer?
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, our antlerless opportunity is just a function of how that population is performing, or it's a tool that we're using to mitigate agricultural damage, for example. So there are places where we use it as a tool to manage the population. Unfortunately, in many populations for general recreational harvest, we can't afford a lot of antlerless harvest, and so we're pretty tight and pretty conservative on how much we issue We don't have a lot of general season harvests, especially on mule deer, as this audience likely knows. And that's because we're managing for stability in these populations, trying to keep them where they are. If you're taking a lot of does and a lot of antlerless animals, you have the potential to be actually driving that population down, which is not where we are for most of our populations. We can't really afford that additional take. So the simple answer is just it's a function of the population.
Yeah, the next question, Kyle, is related to the species specific tag, and it's related to if they choose a species, can they put in special permit for another
Yeah.
species?
Yeah, this isn't something that we've put a lot into. I kind of alluded to this earlier in my response a moment ago, but I would anticipate that that specific example would not happen. You would probably need to apply for the species, those special hunts for the specific species, and by doing so, you would get locked into that species tag, just like the east-west elk system works.
Yeah, and the next one is kind of also on that same note, and it's related to, it's a question and a comment rolled into one. It says, what would happen to youth if you were going to species specific? And then it goes into the comment part. Don't you think it would limit the opportunity for the future of our youth?
Yeah. Well, so youth would still be able to have their seasons. It would just be restricted to a specific species. And, again, I think that this is early in the stage, and this is exactly the kind of input and questions that we want. And so this is something we could go back and consider as we move forward with this and consider this further. Uh, would it limit opportunity? I think it depends on what you define as opportunity. It would limit probably the opportunity for an individual to, well, not probably, but it would limit the individual for pursuing more than one species.
Okay, this next question is related to kind of adding muzzleloader hunting opportunity. And I think we got a lot of that during the scoping. Maybe you could elaborate on how we actually
Yeah.
parse opportunity.
Yeah, so this is sort of broadly under the umbrella of what we call resource allocation. And so what that kind of means is that we're trying to offer, especially in special hunts and really limited hunts, we try to tightly match how much opportunity is being offered commensurate with the participation by that specific weapon type. And so we know that modern firearm hunters represent the majority of hunters for both deer and for elk. So they tend to get the majority of permit opportunity and therefore harvest. And then usually it goes archery and then muzzleloader. That varies by different regions, and we try to move opportunity around. That special hunt we have a little bit more control over, so we try to make sure that that's matched out there so that the percentage of participation is equal to the percentage of harvest that's occurring among the different weapon types. That's really what resource allocation is. And so we just try to balance those two numbers.
The next question is related to multi-season tags, and if if those were done away with, would you not have to restrict late season? And it asks us if we've looked at those data.
Yeah, I believe that the biologist has looked at those. It's certainly under consideration. It is a little bit, I'd have to look at the exact harvest date. I imagine that's for the Okanagan proposal. So I'll go back and look and make sure that we're doing our diligence on that. I don't know off the top of my head how many animals are being harvested under multi-season tags.
Yeah, the next one again is about the species split, and it asks if there'd be late seasons for all three deer species.
Um, let's say again, I'm sorry, Anise.
So it's about the different species
Mm.
licenses. Would there be late season for all three species or
Yeah, I
subspecies?
think it would follow a similar pattern. Some of it would have to shake out to see how do hunters, self-select and what species would they choose. We try to offer the opportunity that we can where the populations can support it and we're hitting our management goals. And so where we can do that, we offer it, and where we can't, we don't. And so I don't think that would change a whole lot immediately, but over a course of a few years as we continue to evaluate it, it might change.
Okay. The next one, and we're probably gonna have to maybe go to the folks that have their hands up, and we might not get to all these questions, but you can also put them in your survey when you do, because there's a lot of questions and we still have elk and moose to get through. But I'll do a few more just to make sure we get some of them. Some of them are redundant, so I'm not repeating them. Let's see. This one is talking about the performance metrics that we use to reduce seasons or increase seasons, and specifically to buck to doe ratios.
Yeah, so our management criteria is broadly is 15, anything above 15 to 100 bucks to does. So that's where we like to see a population. And if we dip below that, we have to start to get a little bit more conservative and dialing back. Above that, we don't tend to see a ton more than 20 in our over-the-counter seasons. Some units we have higher than that. And as you get that number higher, of course, it turns into a more maybe quality experience.
All right, I'm gonna just go through these just to make sure. Some of them are just comments, so I'm not gonna talk about those.
I see one really quickly, and since we're on the subject, it says why not try an east-west steer tag
Yeah, I
system?
saw that too. Yeah.
And I've seen that come in on this preliminary public input. I think we'll put it in the bucket of things to consider as we're considering sort of a broad multitude of like how do we improve a hunting experience? What do the hunters want? What kind of feedback are we getting? And really dive into like what are the anticipated outcomes. So it's not like off the board. It just really simply wasn't proposed in this round, and so it's not really a topic under direct consideration, but tangentially it is on the mind.
Yeah, and one question is why are we even considering the three species? And I think you already hit on that, but it might be good to reiterate that.
Yeah, the species specific one is really just, it comes out of a lot of concern coming from white-tailed deer hunters and mule deer hunters that are concerned about both crowding and harvest pressure that's occurring on those species. And so the species specific tag, of course, forces you to choose one or the other. And so by definition does reduce the hunting pressure to an extent that we don't really know. And it does depend on how those hunters self-select. If everybody chooses to go hunt mule deer, obviously that won't be very tenable. That'll be the opposite of the outcome that we want. That's difficult to predict and something that we're, hoping to get as we get more sentiment put in and more scoping, we'll understand better.
Yeah, let's go to the folks with their hands up. I've gone through most of the chat, and most of them are comments and not or questions that have been answered already.
Perfect. Oh, Chris Fisher, you're the one with your hand up first.
Okay, thank you. And Kyle, you just touched on my question. So the objective for this species-specific deer tags is to, improve the experience, less for the hunter, lessen the pressure. But where you have seasons that overlap, I'm thinking mule deer, whitetail in the eastern part of the state. How how do you foresee that meeting that objective? If yeah, you might be selecting mule deer, but you're still out there with everybody else who's maybe hunting whitetail. So
Yeah.
would you have to then separate those seasons and not have overlap?
Yeah, it's a good observation, Chris. I don't have an immediate answer except to say that, there's probably going to be those areas localized where you may not have a really immediate direct impact. You would maybe see an impact on harvest pressure, right? If you're all still out there in the same unit, but 70% of people are pursuing one species over another, rather than everybody being able to pursue both, you might see a harvest outcome, and you probably will see that participation shift as the harvest feedbacks and populations, sort of react to the different and differential harvests. But it's a good observation and something that I'm going to write down as something we need to consider.
Thank you.
All right. You'd like to mute?
Robert, I think Robert's next. Are you there, Heather? Oh.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so my concern's around the three species, and Kyle kind of touched on it. My concern is it would overpressure the mule deer harvest. I'd be curious to see how many special hunt applications for our hunters list mule deer areas as their preferred choice to kind of gauge like where people would shift because that's what I would do. I live in Western Washington. I love hunting blacktail, but if I had to choose, I would pick mule deer so I can put in for my special hunts for mule deer, and then I would essentially be forced to go east to hunt
Yeah,
and do the
Robert,
opposite of what
if,
you're talking
if I
about.
could start, this is kind of intended to maybe just clarify things, not, so yeah, we would love that comment and please submit it in the comment format in our public input. Uh, we, we're trying to kind of keep this to clarifying things more than commenting because it's hard for us to capture comments in this format.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think it's probably good to move into the elk. Wait, there's a person who put their hand up in the chat. His name is Armstrong, but I don't know if Heather, if you have a way of.
There is a hand up on the actual
Yeah,
my
there
side.
is, but
It's a Zoom user. I don't know.
yeah, let's go ahead and get them.
I'm gonna ask you to unmute, and if you'd like, you can state your name for the record. You don't have to.
My name is Royal Armstrong. I had a couple quick questions about the what are you guys talking about like let's say you buy a tag, you're in for that tag, instead of buying like over the counter deer tag, you can hunt either muleys or blacktail or whitetail. Can you explain that one more time for me, please?
So when are you referring to how I mentioned how a likely outcome of a deer species specific license and tag
Yes.
structure?
Yes.
So a likely outcome of that would be that if you're applying for special hunts, the special hunts would now be species specific as well. And that's, how the East-West elk tag system works. So
Yes.
that would then, again, this is just an initial take. That would likely mean that if you applied for example, a mule deer special hunt and didn't draw that hunt, you would still have that mule deer tag, but you wouldn't, so you couldn't go hunt blacktail, you couldn't go hunt whitetail deer.
So would you guys extend the season? Because like I know everybody works and all that, but I really only get about 2 weekends to hunt. So would you guys extend the hunting season for that?
There's no explicit consideration of that extending season lengths right now associated with the species specific tag.
That would depend on what the harvest ends up being. If we think there's more harvest opportunity, we would extend seasons, but that's all dependent on what harvest looks like.
Okay, cool. I was just curious on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to the elk topic.
All right. Okay. Okay, elk topics. First up here is to eliminate elk area 6061 to reflect reduced conflict levels. So as background, elk areas, generally speaking, are created so that we can address agricultural damage or some specific management need to focus harvest in a smaller area than, say, like a game management unit. So Elk Area 6061 was created to address agricultural damage on private pasture lands. Our agricultural damage folks, our conflict folks rather, are doing a great job. Current levels of conflict no longer warrant a special elk area designation, meaning we don't need that consistent harvest pressure to deal with the damage problems. So we're proposing to eliminate elk area 6061, after which the unit-wide 3-point minimum legal elk regulation would apply. The purpose here is simply to adjust regulations commensurate with our wildlife conflict management needs. Okay, sticking with elk areas, this proposal is to expand elk area 1021 to address increasing elk agricultural damage in adjacent areas. So our area biologists recommend extending the elk area 1021 beyond its existing northern boundary to the Springdale Hunters Road. This isn't a massive increase, but it's a increase meant to include additional landowners and help the department use hunters to reduce crop damage from a growing elk herd without changing the number of permits or the season dates. So this is just giving us the same number of permits right now as we evaluate this, but including more landowners so that we can put those hunters in different areas. And again, this is adjusting regulations commensurate with our wildlife conflict management needs. All right. This topic is to create an elk area in GMU 204 to address increasing agricultural damage and issue 5 antlerless category special permits for this specific elk area. Our area biologists recommend creating this elk area in the northeast portion of the unit that encompasses private lands approximately from Oroville east along the U.S.-Canadian border to Chesaw, then south to the town of Havilah. Permit levels may increase after an initial evaluation period. Just depends on how well we do with that initial issuance of 5 to address those wildlife conflict needs. And again, this is just adjusting our regulations commensurate with those wildlife conflict management needs. Okay, another topic under consideration is to create an elk area in GMU 684. This one has a slightly different bend. It's not about agricultural damage per se. Currently, elk hunting on the Willapa National Wildlife Refuge's Ledbetter Point in GMU 684 is restricted to muzzleloader hunters through the Hunt by Reservation system. This isn't exactly accessible to muzzleloader hunters throughout the state. And so to improve access to this opportunity for those other muzzleloader hunters, our area biologists recommend creating a new elk area encompassing this Ledbetter Point and transitioning those existing hunt permits from the Hunt by Reservation to our special hunt permit system and place those in the quality category with 2 permits total. That's the same level of hunting that occurs now. The purpose here is just to maximize hunting opportunity and access commensurate with our mission. Okay, another topic under consideration is to change the legal elk restriction from any elk to any bull in GMUs 272, 78, 84, and 290. Elk in these units exist at low numbers and are primarily on private land. Our local area biologists recommend implementing an any bull restriction in these units as opposed to the existing any elk to support population growth and future public hunting opportunities. So limiting antlerless harvest means that we can allow the population to grow a little bit more. And then as that population grows, any associated increases in elk conflict would be closely monitored and addressed through our antlerless harvest via the special permit system and or damage tag system. The purpose here is to manage hunting opportunities to ensure sustainable harvest and maximize our future hunting opportunities in this population. Okay, another topic under consideration is that our age and sex ratios and overall harvest levels of elk in the northern Willapa Hills elk herd have consistently declined in recent years. And given these trends, our area biologists recommend limiting antlerless elk harvest to support stability and long-term growth. So as I just mentioned, that antlerless harvest is really the driver of population trajectory. So when you pull back, you should expect a population to at least achieve stability, if not promote growth. The department proposes changing the legal elk restriction in GMUs 501, 660, and 672 from the existing 3-point minimum or antlerless to 3-point minimum only for all weapon types. This change affects the following seasons: the modern firearm in GMU 501, early archery in 501, 660, and 672, late archery in GMU 672, and early and late muzzleloader in GMU 501. And again, the purpose here is to manage hunting to ensure sustainable harvest and maximize future hunting opportunities. Okay, next topic is that bull availability in GMU 602 and 615 has significantly declined to levels below objective. I'm missing a couple of words there based on recent harvest and aerial survey data. To address this, our area biologists recommend closing the early muzzleloader season in both units because this opportunity has higher success rates relative to the other units in these two GMUs, and replacing it with a late muzzleloader season, so shifting that general season into the late season. Our area biologists also recommend closing the late archery season in GMU 615. These changes should reduce harvest pressure on bulls while maintaining general season opportunity for all of our user groups. And again, the purpose here is to manage hunting to ensure sustainable harvest and maximize future hunting opportunities. Okay, the final topic under consideration for elk. The issue background here is overall abundance and bull to cow ratios in the North Cascades elk populations GMU 418 and 437 have recently fallen below desired levels, or dipping down to below our objective levels. Our area biologists recommend adjusting special permit hunts to modestly reduce overall harvest while preserving substantial hunting opportunity for all user groups. This table might be slightly hard to read. If you go to our public input site and provide your comment, you should be able to see that in a much more blown up view. The intent here is really just shifting our season dates slightly forward, shifting those dates forward in the calendar. That's going to probably slightly reduce success rates, limit a little bit of harvest while still providing that opportunity to go out and pursue elk in these units. Purpose here again is to manage hunting to ensure sustainable harvest and maximize future hunting opportunity. And that's the final elk topic under consideration. So I'll just go right here and we'll see what questions we have.
And Kyle, before we go there, there's been folks that wanted a copy of this presentation. And so I put in the chat, there is a link where you can go and actually, there's PDFs of all of the proposed topics for all of the different things. So you don't need the presentation. There's a more detailed write-up on all of these in these PDFs.
Great.
And I put the link in there as well. I'll go ahead and read a couple from the chat, and then we can go to Blake's hand here in a minute. Let's see. Living in elk area 653 White River for many years with an abundant amount of elk, is there any consideration for opening elk season in 653?
That's not a topic under consideration. I'll pass it on to our local biologist. I think that one has a nexus with tribal co-management and not
Right.
something under direct consideration today, but I will discuss it with our area biologist.
Okay, this one is related to the Willapa Hill. I think if you take away Willapa Hill permits, there won't be anything left in the west. So I don't think that was what we had considered.
No, the consideration is for they're taking it's removing the antlerless legal animal from the general seasons, and so
Right.
that again, as I mentioned earlier, just a function of how the population is performing. That northern Willapa, the Willapa Hills elk are doing well overall, including the southern units, but it's really being driven by the southern units, and so these northern units have had poor calf production in recent years. We've got a bull cow ratio that is dipping below where we would like to see it. And the way that we react to that is to turn the dial on antlerless harvests.
Okay. Let's see what else. Okay, there aren't. So let's go to the hands because there aren't any more.
Okay, so if we could have Blake unmute, you're the first one up.
Hi, yeah, thank you. My question isn't specific to any one of these individually, but a question that I think would be beneficial for anybody who's providing public comment on any of these proposals or topics. Are you able to speak to the process of how the comments in these surveys are going to be weighted, incorporated? Can you just speak to that process to help inform people who are going to answer the surveys that you put out?
You want to handle that, Anise, or you want me to take that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look at them in the vein they're given. So if it's something that we think is not necessary to reduce, like if it's not biologically necessary, then we will weigh more towards the public comment. But if it is biologically necessary, we need to figure out a different way to achieve that same thing. And so we would propose something different. So that's the way so if it's purely a social thing, then we'll basically go along with what the majority of folks are saying. But if it's a biologically driven thing and we need to figure out how to reduce harvest, then we would have to come up with an alternative if folks are opposed to whatever the idea is.
Is there any sort of like formal structure for how you're considering the comments? I mean, are you doing like a tally? Are you categorizing things based into like general themes and weighting them based on how many people commented a certain thing, or is there any sort of formal process on that?
The formal process is every one of these people get to weigh in, and we'll assess them when they come in and see if people are like you're going to be asked whether you oppose or whether you're for it. That's the first thing. And then you're given an opportunity to comment underneath. And so if most people are opposed to it and it's mostly a social issue, we will likely not move forward with it. If most people are for it and it's a social issue, we will likely propose it. If it's a biological issue and people are opposed to it, then we'll have to figure out an alternative to get to that same place.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. The next person that has their hand up is Haley. You can unmute.
Hello, thank you for your time this evening. I have a couple questions. First, regarding elk area 6061. Seeming as agricultural damage is the main reason for this elk area, I'm curious to hear whether it's the private landowners that are pushing for the elimination of the area and if they are pushing for the 3-point minimum.
Thanks, Haley. The 3-point minimum is the standard in Western Washington for elk. So unlike Eastern Washington, our harvest management varies on the two sides of the state. So that's just sort of the default there if you take away the elk area. And yeah, I mean, I think that you can say at least indirectly the landowners there that are suffering the damage support it. When you're not incurring the damage issues and you have hunters knocking on your door wanting to come in and pursue elk with a tag that they were awarded when there's not elk damage to address. But the proposal came internally through our area biologists and our wildlife conflict staff. So I assume that was in conjunction with the landowners.
Okay. Sorry, let me find this here. Um, there were more than I thought on here.
We can go back to if you need us to.
Okay, I've got it pulled up here. I'm just trying to read at the same time. Okay, the change in legal elk restriction from any elk to any bull in GMUs 272, 278, 284, and 290, is that coming from landowners or is that coming strictly from biologists?
Yeah, that's coming from the area biologist. Again, kind of, I believe that that's in, kind of conjunction with what he understands about the damage occurring in those private lands. The elk numbers are relatively small in that area, and so the biologists there would like to encourage some population growth, keeping it in check, of course, and keeping that damage component in check. But that is an internal proposal.
Okay. I know this is comment on that fact, but please heavily weigh the consideration of private landowners in that. Just in my personal experience, once that regulation goes in, populations have exploded to an uncontrollable amount, and I would hate for other landowners to go through that same process of loss that I have. And I will keep my comment to that.
Thanks, Haley.
Yes. And then I think That was all of them that I had at the moment.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The next person is Chris Fisher. Please unmute.
Thank you. Can you give me a little more detail on the hunt in the northern Okanagan, the Cheesaw to Havila area? I think there was a permit hunt, like 5 cow tags.
Yeah, that's
It
correct.
seems like it's a small number. Is that what was the impetus to move that forward or suggest that? I guess it's not a proposal yet, but just a little
Yeah,
more
so
background.
so the underlying motivation, of course, is to address the agricultural damage, and when we try to the extent that we can to have regular everyday hunters have an opportunity to help us with that. And so, starting at 5 is a conservative place for us to start. Usually, in these situations, you see in private land pretty high success, and those area biologists have just landed on 5 being the number to start with, probably based on how many animals are seeing and getting reported by those private landowners incurring the damage. So the size of the area just gives the flexibility to put those hunters where they need them to address the damage issues. The permit levels are just sort of commensurate with the damage levels. We're not trying to drive that population into the ground. We're just trying to mitigate damage and provide that opportunity where we can to the everyday hunter.
And just a follow up, would that be that permit? Would that be for any weapon, or would that be specific to a certain weapon?
Yeah, sometimes they're any weapon. It kind of depends on the landscape and whether or not like a modern firearm is a safe choice. Typically they are because we want to have high success. We're not there's a management need there to go and address an animal and get it harvested, and so we typically lean toward those higher success rate weapons. But occasionally we do see them restricted to maybe an archer or a muzzleloader, but I don't know those details. It hasn't been proposed in the permit system yet, but I can follow up with that. I suspect, though, Chris, that it would be open for modern firearm hunters.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person to unmute is it's an email. It's mlindacox@yahoo.com. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, thank you for bringing this to our attention. My main concern is there going to be anything written in proposals coming up that will reverse any of these statutes so that when the populations start building up, that the wording is there to, so that they don't stay and forever. I've seen restrictions like this happen and then they just kind of stay that way. So I was just curious.
Yeah, good question. So we adjust our rules as needed on an annual basis. We try to take bigger rule changes like general season changes, et cetera, as you saw today, at 3-year intervals, so that we have a period of time to evaluate any change and to create consistency for the hunting public. But the bottom line is that, a rule can be changed so long as Anise mentioned, it makes biological sense. There is sort of a baseline biological need that we need to meet in our mandate of ensuring the populations are sustainable and perpetuated into the future. And outside of that, we have a lot of latitude to make changes, again, based then on management objectives, management needs. So this isn't like RCW and state law. This is administrative code that can and is often adjusted on an annual or semi-annual basis.
Great. And good to hear. Also, the other concern I have is predators. I know that's kind of been avoided quite a bit in this meeting so far. Is there going to be any topics addressing the predator kills going forward? I know we're curving the hunters hunting. I'm just curious about the predator hunting.
Yeah, so I don't have any topics under consideration, and my ungulate topics specific to carnivores and predators. There are some topics under consideration tomorrow in tomorrow's town hall.
Not
But
tomorrow's. Tomorrow's is waterfowl. I think
when is
it's next week, I think.
oh, it's next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, Anise, if you wanted to say anything more there than besides my response.
No, I mean this is the ungulate presentation, and it's how we hunt ungulates. And if there were issues related to ungulate populations, then it would go through a separate process related to predation.
Okay, I was just curious if there was going to be a topic coming up, but
We will discuss some topics related to carnivore management, and
Okay.
that'll be next week.
okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Our next person is Eric. If you would please unmute.
Yes, I was just wondering if there was going to be any discussion about the hoof rot issue in the southwest part of the state that is wiping out the elk population.
Well, Eric, there's no specific like hunting proposal. I'd be happy to, talk with you about hoof disease and the work of the agency. We do have a program to try to incentivize the take of diseased animals. We have a limited number of master hunter special permits that are specific to targeting diseased animals. I'd be happy to elaborate with you more. If we can maybe put in my email address or something in the chat, you can reach out and I can speak with you on those. There's nothing under direct consideration in this 3-year season setting related to hoof disease.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other hands at this time.
Okay. Anything in the
Looks like
chat?
someone's got a hand up. Samsung SM.
Yep. So this is coming across as Samsung SM. If you could unmute yourself. And then go ahead and send you a link. All right.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, sorry. I'm on my phone trying to do this. So I had a question. I put it in the chat a couple of times there, but we're looking at management populations in these areas. Is there records of out of state hunting and how many tags are sold and how many harvests are made in these areas? And the second part to that question has there been consideration to maximizing resident hunting while in troubled areas of population, minimizing out of state tags, and would that have any bearing on it? I know that's what Idaho went to this year, first year doing a draw system for non-residents. Has there been any research or consideration to a similar model in Washington?
Yeah, good question. Not something under direct consideration, kind of like the similar question. I was hoping to pull up a worksheet I have, because I'd like to give precise numbers, but I don't have it right here. I can't quite find it in the quick list here on Excel. I think the bottom line though is, the out-of-state resident participation is actually pretty low. So if we oh the level of harvest that comes from non-residents is in the low single digits. I hesitate to give a number because I don't have it really handy and I'd like to provide the accurate number. But for deer, I want to say it's less than 3%. For elk, it's even less than that. So it's pretty low. It is something that we have looked at. And in terms of like harvest pressure, hunting crowding, etc., I'm not sure that it would turn the dial a lot. But that isn't to say that it isn't something that we're looking at, and we're certainly aware of how other states have gone on non-resident participation.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I've looked all over for non-resident numbers and can't seem to find it in the harvest stats. And then
Yeah,
the second,
go ahead.
oh,
Sorry.
oh, sorry, I was going to change topics to another question. I asked about tribal hunting in those areas as well, like specifically the 600 numbers units that were mentioned for the 3-point and antlerless restriction. Is there tribal hunting seasons that are lengthy, and are they limited by weapon choice like non-tribal protected rights are? Because like I'm an archery hunter primarily, and I've been out in like other units like Stampede Pass, and I'm out there competing with tribal hunting, and I remember having conversations with people that were tribal hunters. They had 6 tags in their pocket hunting for multiple other tribal members, family members, and they were also not restricted to the antler restrictions that us non-tribal members had. So I'm just curious, do these areas down on the coast that are being considered for rule change also have similar attributes to them with the tribal hunting rights, or are they separate, or are they non-existent down there?
In what specific area? Can you say again?
I don't know the exact. It was 672,
Oh,
and that
yeah.
the Willapa Hills area that you're talking about. I don't remember all the unit numbers. I know 672 stands out in my head.
Sure, sure. So I'll say first, tribal nations, tribal governments do run their own wildlife programs. They issue their own hunting regulations and systems, independent of WDFW. In many places, we have good management partnerships, and we do our best to collaborate and make sure that we're keeping harvest sustainable. And in that specific area of the northern Willapa Hills elk herd, there probably is some tribal harvest. I don't know off the top of my head. The overwhelming amount of harvest, though, is from state hunters. I think that I'd need to go and look at our status and trend reports to tell you just what the proportion is. But the answer to the sort of restrictions and those sorts of things is really just on a case by case basis. It depends largely on that individual tribal government, and the size of those governments and what they're able to go out there and enforce, and then what they're willing to put forward. But that gets into pretty complicated treaty rights and what they're able to do independent of WDFW. So I guess that's kind of all I have to say there, that they really run their own programs, but oftentimes in partnership with us.
And are those reporting numbers available?
Yeah, usually you can find them where they're available is on our WDFW status and trend reports. And I see that that was just posted into the chat. So I think that you can check that out there for those specific units. We get pretty good data in Western Washington where we have tribal hunters that have smaller reservations. And so they're usually hunting and overlapping more with state hunters. And then really
Excellent.
quickly, just as a quick poll, just since you brought it up, it's not under consideration or anything, but this is the most recent license year for deer. Less than it was 2% of hunters, non-resident hunters, less 2% of harvest is from non-resident hunters. Only 1% of all hunters for deer in Washington were non-residents. A little higher for elk, so it's 3% of elk harvested come from non-residents, and 2% of elk hunters in our state are non-residents.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm going to give a few seconds for more hands to come up, but right now I don't see any.
There was a chat, Heather, that says that George Mark Kelly's trying to raise his hand, but I don't
George
know.
Mark Kelly. Let me go see if I can find him and try to give him. If you can unmute George, feel free. We have 111 participants.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah, you're on your computer and on your phone, so you're getting a lot of feedback.
There we go. So if you have
You're muted, Anise. George, if you've got two devices and they're both, if you're unmuted on both, you're getting this kind of crazy echoey feedback. So just try us on either the phone or the laptop or whatever computer you're on.
I think yeah, I don't know. I don't think if you could type your question in the chat, we might be able to answer it that way. Unless you're on your phone, which doesn't help you much. I'm sorry. All right. Maybe we move to the next topic and we'll leave some time at the end to hit all topics if we have time.
Okay. I apologize. I've got some drawing happening on my slideshow. Do you all see that on your end?
Yeah, I think somebody's Being an artist.
Yeah, that's not mine. It reminds me of my 4-year-old niece's renderings. All right, we'll jump down to moose. Okay, a handful of topics for consideration here under moose. First up is allowing the salvage of road-killed moose. So moose struck by vehicles currently cannot be salvaged, unlike our policy on deer and elk. This is due to past concerns about poaching and enforcement challenges dealing with this once-in-a-lifetime species. Department staff do not currently feel that these concerns outweigh the potential for animal wastage and therefore recommend permitting road-killed moose salvage, again akin to how we operate for deer and elk. The purpose here is to minimize animal wastage associated with vehicle collisions. Next topic is establishing an any bull moose permits in north central Washington. Moose have established healthy populations in north central Washington, and to meet the rising demand for once-in-a-lifetime species hunts, managers proposed 2 new any bull permits and hunt areas. One permit would cover GMUs 209 to 224 and 233, and another covering GMUs 231 and 239 to 243. This limited harvest isn't expected to affect the population's growth. This is very limited bull harvest, so we're not going for the antlerless component. And the purpose here is to maximize hunting opportunity commensurate with our agency's mission. The next topic under consideration is merging the Spokane West moose hunt area with its adjacent hunt areas. Recent changes in private land ownership and associated access restrictions with that private land in GMU 124 have significantly limited the publicly accessible area within the Spokane West moose hunt area. This has effectively eliminated a large component of that original hunt area and validated this hunt as a viable special hunt. In response, the department is proposing to merge the Spokane West hunt area with the adjacent hunt units. The purpose here is to adjust our hunt areas commensurate with public access and to adequately match opportunity with hunter expectations, particularly for this once-in-a-lifetime species opportunity. Okay, next up is a proposal of combining an early and late special hunt season in GMU 108 and 111. Background here is that success rates for bull moose hunts in these units have declined, requiring more days in the field. Although our biologists feel that permit numbers are still appropriate for the area and the number of moose in those units, these biologists want to improve hunter success. To do so, the department proposes merging the early and late seasons into a single October 1 to November 30 season while keeping permit levels unchanged. The purpose here is to adjust permit opportunities commensurate to adequately match opportunity with hunter expectations. So just trying to really boost harvest success in this unit, in this hunt. Okay, another topic under consideration is to create archery-only moose special permits in GMUs 101, 105, and 204. This is the Kettle Range and East Okanagan. Modest additional bull moose harvest in these GMUs is sustainable given the population level. So to expand opportunity, the department proposes a new archery-only hunt from September 16 to October 15 with 5 permits. This would slightly increase bull moose harvest while boosting access to a once-in-a-lifetime moose hunt and in line with tribal opportunities. So there's an existing tribal opportunity that's the exact same dates and number of permits. So matching tribal opportunity in the area, and the purpose here is to maximize our hunting opportunity commensurate with our mission. And I think that's the last in moose. It is.
I don't see any. Oh, there we go.
All right. We have again Samsung SM. Go ahead
Yeah.
and unmute.
Oops.
They did not unmute. One more time, Samsung, if you can unmute yourself, you can go first.
Yeah, thank you. The question I have is with 124 Spokane West. If you open that up, or if you add that onto the adjoining or the adjacent game units for the moose, what will that do for the total amount of one, tags, opportunities, and two, how would you divide that into the adjacent ones? Would they go to Spokane North, Spokane South, or would they go over to I'm not quite sure if it's a 130 or whatever the unit is to the west of that across the river.
Sure. Yeah. So our biologists are still working on the permit level recommendations, and we've encouraged them, of course, to keep them where they are and not have a loss of permit opportunity if possible. It kind of just depends on how the harvest shook out from last year. I expect that there might be a reduction in the total number of permit levels, but they are attempting to try to keep those the same.
I guess the reason why I'm asking is I've actually been drawn for my moose a couple of years ago, so it's not really about harvesting one. What I'm seeing though is with the number of fires that have gone through that 124 West or Spokane West, it is just two things are happening. One, some areas are getting more moose because of the browse and so forth. Other areas, the moose numbers are actually dropping because the lack of browse or thermal cover, if you will, in the winter time, especially the later part of the seasons. That's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, that's actually I hadn't the recent fire impacts hadn't crossed my mind as this proposal had been put forward long before those. So that's a great input there, and I will visit with our area biologists on what they anticipate.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chris Fisher, you're go ahead and go up again.
All right. Well, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the units that you're combining, just for, I think, to potentially increase harvest. So by combining those units, would that not reduce the opportunity for hunters to hunt moose? You just got one less unit because you're putting two into one. And I just think that, I've been putting in for moose for a long time and not been successful. I know a lot of people have. It just seems like we're reducing the opportunity for people to have this unique opportunity, and it's getting more unique by doing that. I would also like to dovetail on one more thing. The Okanagan unit has just one opportunity. It's one season. It doesn't have the split season like the other units do. And I'm just wondering what the reasoning is for that. I appreciate, though, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity with the archery, unique archery tags for the those three units. I welcome that. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. I think your first question was about merging this GME 124, the Spokane West, into its adjoining units. And if that's the case, I totally understand the concern around lost opportunity. But what's happening here is that the new landowner of a majority of this hunt unit isn't allowing public access. And so you're facing the situation where a hunter may draw this once in a lifetime, very difficult to draw hunt and have a kind of an inviolable hunt because there's really nowhere for them to go and they can't get the access. They can't get behind the gates. And so we really can't offer a hunt in an area where you can't go and actually hunt. That would be disingenuous of us to do. And so that's the attempt here is we do want to try to minimize the loss and the number of permits. We're always attempting to do that. It's based on what the population can support. And as we just heard, the impact of fires and things like that might be new considerations. Permit levels haven't been established. That's coming later in our formal rulemaking process. But that's the intent here, if that's the proposal you're speaking on. And then the other question about sort of the single season versus split season, I'm gonna have to go and look at that one. I really don't know the answer to that one, except that as we've expanded some hunts, if this is where I think you're thinking, we're trying to do that conservatively. We're trying to, offer as much opportunity as we can for moose, but we do want to kind of toe into new areas where we're allowing moose harvest in these areas where moose are establishing themselves. They're doing well where they establish themselves, but we are putting harvest in there at a fairly conservative level. just to get that feedback. And as we learn more, as success rates and harvest and hunter feedback comes in, we adjust our permit systems on kind of that annual to semi-annual basis.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the thoughtful responses. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
There we go. Another question.
All right, so go ahead and unmute yourselves. You're recognized as Samsung S731U. Okay, I see your.
There you
Can
go.
you
I
hear
think
me
you're
now?
unmuted now. Yep.
Okay. I was just curious when you're talking about an archery only season over there, the people who hunt now for moose can use an archery equipment if they want to. So it's being more specific, and actually some of the other people won't have the opportunity. Why not just add a couple more permits to the season that's already there instead of an archery only one? And I am an archery hunter, by the way, but I was on that moose hunt a couple years ago with a friend of mine, and that would be a big challenge.
Yeah, and I think that that's where really it sums up is that we can afford a little bit of harvest, like
Mhm.
one or two bulls maybe. So if there's an individual out there, there's a couple of reasons. So we want to offer the opportunity. If there's an individual who thinks they're a good enough archer that they can go out and pursue an animal and be successful, and they want to use their points on an archery only special hunt, more power to them. It's going to be a challenge and it's going to be difficult. It helps cycle some people through the point system, right? So we have this bottleneck, so it allows some more permanent opportunity. And the anticipation is there'll be a low success rate. So it is a hunter's choice that they're going to go walk into a hunt with a anticipated low success rate. And that's by design because we can't afford a whole lot more moose being harvested. And then the other piece there is that it overlaps. It's sort of directly matching what is a tribal opportunity. And we've been asked several times about, hey, would you entertain kind of matching that opportunity? And so this is an internal proposal by the area biologist wanting kind of that public input on, does this idea float? Do people find it exclusionary? Do they find it like a good idea? And again, not going to have that population impact that we'd be concerned about.
Okay. And then as far as adding a hunt to Unit 209, 215, 231, and all that up there, I think that's a fantastic idea up until the fire here recently, because I have friends of mine who shed hunt up there and there's moose everywhere. They find, 20 to 30 sets of antlers every year up there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea. And I think that's a good thing.
Appreciate your feedback.
Yep. You bet. I'll try to unmute this thing. It's pretty tough on my phone here.
Good luck.
Heather can help you with that.
Yep, I muted you. So I know George is still on. I'm wondering if he wants to try to unmute one more time and see if you can eliminate that background noise. I don't see any other hands either, so we can kind of hang out and see if he can unmute. Nope,
We
there's
got
some
one
hands.
hand. We got Samsung S918U.
Yep.
Hey guys, I just thought of another question. So, talking with biologists and enforcement alike, especially in the North Spokane, South, North Spokane, Mount Spokane North and South, and of 124 units, they're talking, or what I've been told, is that the numbers have actually been decreasing. Moose numbers have been. And so when I'm looking at that and hearing what you guys are saying, you guys are saying the numbers are actually increasing possibly in those areas.
No.
I know some areas are not, but in those areas especially, you say they are increasing.
In the Okanagan, sort of north central Washington, we see a population expanding and growing.
So you don't see.
It varies among units. Those southern units aren't performing as well, like closer to Spokane aren't performing as well. We have populations that are performing at more stability. Some of the units are struggling with productivity, not productivity, but with recruitment. And so it is something that we're looking at and concerned about in terms of that, like broader Northeast Washington levels, and we're probably looking at antlerless moose harvest. But The expanding population and growing population is sort of that north central.
Okay, because that was my question: is why if you're finding that the numbers are dwindling down or not getting the recruitment you need in those areas, why not limit the cow? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do is sort of the cow harvest is a function of how that population is performing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
All right, there's an iPhone user that's got their hand up. I'm gonna send an unmute to them. Go ahead and unmute now.
Oh, thank you. This is Sean Webb. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Oh, excellent. Hey, I just had two things. Number one, I was wondering how the commission reflects on any of these changes. Is this passed to them, or is this a public where we're having the discussion and then we have the surveys and that's kind of how it's completed, or is this something that goes to the commission and they have the final say?
Yeah, so this is very early in the process, so the commission has not weighed in on these at all.
Okay.
Ultimately, yes, we will create specific rules that will have to be adopted by the commission, or if they choose to delegate to the director would make the decision. So, yes, there's still a long way in the process, and that's why we are saying that because right now these aren't even proposals yet. We haven't even
Got it.
written any rules. These are just us getting a feel for where folks are on these so we
Mhm.
can make better decisions.
Okay, and this is just a comment for hoof rot disease. So I'm a cattle rancher, and that is easily solved. Not necessarily the ones that get it, but certainly the immune system is taken care of by selenium blocks. Has there been any discussion of dropping selenium blocks all over for these elk for the next generation, so the immune systems are built up and it's not passed from one to the other? Because that's how we solve it.
I'll quickly address that. Yes, it's been very thoroughly discussed over the last 15 or more years, both sort of in internal, external, researchers, et cetera, wildlife health, veterinarians. A primary issue is you end up concentrating animals, and it's a transmissible disease, as you know, and so bringing sick individuals and healthy individuals together is sort of the exact opposite of what we want to do. And then just the feasibility of putting selenium out on the landscape like that isn't really something that we've ever really seriously entertained as a management option.
Well, that's too bad. Just give it to hunters and have them drop it everywhere.
As usually the response. I appreciate it, but not something we're seriously entertaining.
Waiting to see if there's any other hands. As of right now, I don't see any.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat recently. So if nobody else has any questions, we can wrap it up early, I guess.
Well, there's still methods.
Oh, there's still methods. Yeah, I forgot about the methods.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The show must go on.
My bad. Yeah.
Okay, folks, I appreciate you all sticking with us this evening. Just a handful of topics here under consideration that we're hoping to get public input on. So first up, and you'll see this in other Animal Guild town halls, is simplifying hunting hours for big game animals, rabbits, hares, fox, and forest grouse. Of course, we're talking big game. That's specific to ungulates in this proposal. So the background here is that official hunting hours vary by date and location each year, making the previous regulations that set the specific hunting hours based on the day rather variable, occasionally inaccurate, and difficult to track statewide. WDFW is considering a proposal that simplifies the rules to only state 1/2 hour before sunrise to 1/2 hour after sunset without providing specific times in rule. If you go into the rule, you'll see that there's specific timetables published each year. So instead, in addition, we'd have 1/2 hour before sunrise and after sunset, and then we would provide a sunrise sunset widget in the WDFW mobile app if you're a user of that app. The purpose here is just to simplify our regulations, which is a common request from our hunting public. Next topic under consideration is to use consistent general hunting season dates. So the background here is that general hunting season dates often vary to begin on weekends or preferred days of the week, like a Saturday, each year for many big game, upland game, and waterfowl species. This can make it difficult for the public to track these changing regulations. WDFW is considering changing the regulations for these species to have consistent general season start and end dates each year. And this change would not include changing youth or age or senior hunters or hunters with disabilities. Again, the purpose here is just an effort to simplify our regulations. Last topic under consideration for public input is prohibiting trail cameras during the fall hunting seasons. So trail cameras, including newer cellular models that send images directly to phones, have become common tools for hunters to scout big game year-round and in season. These technological advances raise concerns among some hunters and wildlife managers who feel they may conflict with fair chase principles and increase hunting pressure. Several Western states have already adopted restrictions on both traditional and cellular trail cameras. And given these concerns and the potential effects on harvest, the department is seeking public input on whether trail camera use for hunting on public land should be prohibited from August 1st through December 31st. The purpose behind this topic is the department is simply interested in public sentiment on regulating this hunting technology. And I believe that is the last proposal or last topic for consideration.
We do have a question about the trail cameras one, Kyle.
Okay.
It says, what science is there backing up the use of trail cameras and harvest success?
Yeah, there's not great any empirical evidence really there. You know, I think other states have made their determinations based mostly on social values. You know, there's different contexts where there might be choke points in different areas, like in the Southwest, where trail cameras have become not only a nuisance for people, but probably do influence harvest success. It's a hard thing to track and probably something akin to kind of trying to get a solid number on any of those things that sort of happen outside of a reporting. You know, we don't ask questions of like, did you use a trail camera associated with your harvest? So it is a challenging thing to put a number to.
Okay, great. We do have a couple of people hands up.
Yeah.
I think
First person is Samsung. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yep. Have another question concerning the trail cameras as well. The question I have though is, and I saw somebody else make a comment on it during the chat, is we use the trail cameras not only for hunting, but to also look and see who's trespassing on our property. We also utilize them to see what kind of, after the fires, what kind of wildlife is actually coming back into the area, etc. So there's many different uses for them. And I don't think by limiting or by saying trail cameras can't be used August 1st through hypothetically, I can't remember what you said there on your screen, December 31st, for example, is really worth anything. And then you also got to look at the enforcement aspect of it. If you're going to tell us we can't utilize trail cameras, how is that going to put that much more stress or effort from the agents to try to enforce that? You've already taken away feeding, which I'm not opposed to at all. But the trail camera thing, I mean, my grandson has his own trail camera because he just likes to look at it at the age of 6 and likes to see the animals that come in. So I wonder how that would affect the public as well as the enforcement aspect of stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's exactly the kind of input we want to encourage you to go online and put in your input formally in our public input site. And that's the same for a lot of folks. I see quite a bit coming off on the comment string. So unless it's a clarification of like the proposed topic here, I think I'd really appreciate it if you make sure that your comment makes it into the public input site so it can have formal consideration there. It's very challenging to track it here in the Zoom chat.
Haley.
Go ahead.
Thank you again. So for trail cameras, how do you plan on enforcing what is being used for hunting versus what is being used for other purposes.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be a challenging thing, and something that would need a lot of thought and consideration. Maybe restricted to sort of a caught in the act situation, but there are many challenging enforcement issues, and it's still our job to enforce the rules. So if this were to move forward, we would just be working with our enforcement program to figure out how to best do that. But it's a primary challenge of that topic and that consideration.
For sure, thank you. And then additionally, I know it said on the changes for one moment, please. Thank you, Dad. Sorry, there's background noise. For the changes to hunting times for before and after sun up and sun down, it said on the mobile app having a widget basically to track that. There's lots of places without cell service. Would there be leeway? I mean, there's only so much. It's the same thing with time, but where does that come into play in cell service and those things?
Yeah, Anise, do you have any thoughts on that? I think that the
Yeah, I
app has
think,
offline capability, and
well, it doesn't matter. I mean, before you leave for the field, you should see when sunrise and sunset is, and then keep that in mind. I mean, it's not rocket science. Sunrise and sunset is published in many different places all over when it is official sunrise and sunset. And so I don't think it would be difficult for a hunter to kind of know that. I mean, we can continue publishing it. It's just, not, it's not as simple, I guess.
No, for sure. I do not
Yeah,
disagree necessarily with this
yeah,
proposal. I just wanted to hear your opinion on it.
yeah,
Personally, like I have cell service every night, but for people who are out and about and don't have cell service for multiple days, but again, it really isn't any more difficult than knowing when the sun goes up and comes down. So,
right. Yeah,
thank you.
real quick, Anise, as a clarification, so this is what we're hoping to do here. I did hear in a comment earlier, a question earlier, and then I see one in the comment string around sort of using trail cams on a person's private property, and that rule topic is actually specific to public lands, and that's similar to what other states have implemented. So it would not be a consideration on private lands.
yeah, and I think that's what that one gentleman was asking about was on private land, and so yeah, I think that would certainly reduce some of the, you know, issues. But I would love to hear from folks about that topic specifically. And it looks like we got Samsung S906. Go ahead and unmute.
I think maybe that's me. Seems like there's a lot of people with Samsung as a call
Yeah,
tag.
almost everybody's got a Samsung.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll figure out how to put my name in next time.
No worries.
On the daylight hours issue, is there a preferred data source that would be used for this quote unquote widget? Because east side, west side is different. What happens if you're not using the Fish and Wildlife app, which I am not an app user. I
Yeah.
use online and I use the printed regulations. What would be my reliable source to know what the enforcement officer is using for daylight hours? I mean, are they going to use NOAA, or do I go to AccuWeather? Like, what data source is going to be consistent and making sure that I have one that is not different if I'm in Western Washington or Central Washington? Because I mean, we're all in the same time zone, but obviously the hours differ as you traverse
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah, almost every weather app has a sunrise and sunset for your location.
So you get in trouble from an officer, the expectation would be, hey, I screenshot my NOAA app, and that's going to be enforceable in court versus the officer's word of what he thought an enforceable hour was, and he's going to quote, well, the widget said it was 6:55, but your app said 6:56, and you shot the deer at 6:56. Would that be the prevailing
Yeah,
mindset of how I'd have to go to court?
I hope officers are not splitting hairs to that extent, and I know they don't. And so let's stay realistic and kind of just maybe use a little bit more I don't know. I mean, yeah, if somebody is that precise and they're waiting to the last minute or the first minute that they can shoot, then I would say wait another minute if you're worried about it.
That seems like the opposite of being clear with legal statute of
Well,
what
we can
rules
we can
are.
again, if you're against it, just please voice that opinion, and we will continue to print it. It's that simple.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I guess this is trying not to make the comment in the form of a question, but it might come off that way. If a public and private landowner has different, or excuse me, a hunter on public land versus a hunter on private land have different rules, specifically around game cams. Is it reasonable to believe that those hunters on private land will now have, access to other tools and therefore probably a higher success rate than those on public land?
Possibly. I think it depends on the premise of how effective and how helpful a trail camera is in your pursuit. I'd say that a lot of private land hunts inherently do have higher success as it is. So, how much a trail cam is moving the needle there, it would be hard to say.
Okay.
All right, again, we have a Samsung SMS918U. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was going to ask, can we go back or can I ask a question about the moose?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so like I said, I've answered a couple questions, or asked a couple questions earlier. And like I said, I've already harvested, so I'm not trying to make it easier for me. But my question is to make it easier for others to get drawn for the moose. Have there been any talk about limiting or making like a 3 point, the 3 point brow tines like in Alaska or so forth, and leaving the amount of bulls out there or the tags out there?
No, that's not the topic under consideration for this 3 year. I'm aware of similar rules. We track age in the harvest. And so we want to see a 4.5 to 5.5 year old on average bull being harvested. That's our primary criteria in looking at bull harvest. We could explore that as a way to increase permit numbers, assuming that limits harvest success enough. But it isn't something that it is under consideration now. And I think going back to kind of the broader process, I would encourage, like, those are good ideas, not under consideration for this season setting. But I do encourage you to put those forward either through your regional office, if you're in Region 1, that's Spokane, or into the wildlife program so that they can be really formally evaluated.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll do that. Because the reason why I was asking is I've seen a couple that come out of the area that are like 2-year-old bulls,
Yeah.
and it's like, that's great, but the success rate on a mature bull, that's what you want. You talk about recruitment and stuff. You want those older bulls to be around. The younger bulls, the younger bulls to be around too. That's all I was asking for.
Well,
So
and just also to note that it's a once in a lifetime harvest opportunity. So if they don't harvest, they can go right back into the pool, which may reduce opportunity in the future. And so if they drew, you probably want them to harvest so they don't go back into the pool. So it's a mixed bag, I guess, when you look at it from all different perspectives. And
it
some
is.
folks are perfectly happy with a 3-year-old moose. And I know many of those folks who have been happy with that type of moose.
No, I'm not saying that people would be happy because, especially in Washington, any moose is a trophy because, like you say, it's only a once in a lifetime
Right.
if you harvest.
Right.
But what I'm looking at is the length of time those seasons are. Um, and if you allow those smaller moose to mature, you should have a much better success rate, after the first couple of years when those bulls get to the 4.5 to 5.5 range average.
Well, we are harvesting about that, about a 4.5-year-old average.
Right, I understand that. What I'm saying though is the success rate, if you leave the numbers the way they are, without reducing the cow takes, hypothetically, or reducing bull takes, should increase if you allowed the smaller ones to mature into that age range before
Yeah, no, I
harvesting.
appreciate that input. And again, it's not something we're considering here, but please, yeah, please put it forward for future consideration.
Thank you.
All right. B. Stolzenberg, please unmute.
Hey there. So obviously I didn't see it posted here within the current rule change for 2729. But there was some communication earlier and some kind of chatter going around related to elimination of over-the-counter permits for deer and elk. Was there any talk or consideration like coming into this 2729 rule change proposal?
I'm sorry, Brian. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I guess was there any um, discussion within the department as far as elimination of over-the-counter permits for deer and or elk? Obviously, I see it. I don't see it in the 2729, but was it ever part of the discussion coming into this?
No, it's never been a formal topic of consideration for this 3-year season setting. It's a topic that comes up often and is something that's, for lack of a better term, kind of always on our mind because it's a common public input consideration that we get to improve hunting experiences, but we haven't moved forward with any formal topic for consideration in this 3-year season setting.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other hands right now?
Yeah, I don't see any new questions in the chat. Just some comments. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for the thoughtful questions and the dialogue. Please reach out to the survey and give us your input in a more formal way so we can capture it and help us in making those decisions. With that, we'll wrap it up for today and have a great night.